Hey, today I'm going to show you guys how to do an oil change on this 2018 Cadillac ATS turbo. It's got the 2-liter LTG turbocharged intercooled engine, and I'm also doing a follow-up on my oil catch can because every time I do an oil change, I look at my catch can and empty the oil or the nastiness that got caught in it. Well, I took off the catch can, and as you can see, it saved my intake from getting a lot of crud. Because here's the inside of the catch can. Look at that. Look at all that nasty crud. Look at all that nasty. Look at all that nasty crud in there. Ugh. That would have all went in my engine. Right in the intake, in the turbocharger, and got all over the intake valves. Yep, that's why I'm glad I put the catch can in the Cadillac. Look at all that nasty stuff. And I designed that catch can myself. So there's the follow-up on the catch can. And I'm going to empty it, clean the baffle, reinstall it, do my oil change, and I'm going to show you the oil change and how you do it on a 2018 Cadillac. It's also the same for the beginning of the LTG Cadillac, and probably the same for the other vehicles the 2-liter LTG turbocharged engine is in. So, okay, more to follow. I'm going to clean that catch can, put it all back together, and start the oil change. Okay. First thing is you jack up the car, and I'll show you the jacking point. On the Cadillac ATS, I put my jack stand right under this area right here where you see that little area that's open, and I went right here where there's a kind of a frame member, and I put like an old disc brake pad there between that and the jack stand. And okay, here's the type of oil I use. I use Supertech 100% synthetic and 5W30, and it meets or actually beats Dexos requirements, and that's what's required for Dextron. And Supertech is a really high quality synthetic oil. Most of the time, I used to use always Mobil 1 or Castrol or Valvoline, but I found that Supertech is just as good for a fraction of the price. Like this 5-quart bottle, 5W30 full synthetic, perfect compliance with Dexos or Dextron. $15 for one of these bottles, where an equivalent bottle of Mobil 1 or Castrol or Valvoline would be around $30. So this is a good deal. On this case, I did get the Delco filter, and for the 2-liter turbo LTG, it's a PF64, and I always inspect the oil filter to make sure it has the little O-ring is perfectly on the oil filter. It's not all dented and damaged. It's in good shape. And I always put a little bit of oil around the gasket, and you always make sure when you take off the old oil filter that the gasket comes off, the old gasket comes off with the old oil filter, because if the gasket sticks to the block and you put another gasket with a new oil filter on there, it's going to cause a leak. So I'm going to get some more things going here. Okay, got the oil drain pan. I've got the 15 millimeter, that's what the oil pan drain bolt is. And remember to go lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So lefty-loosey to loosen the bolt, righty-tighty to tighten the bolt. Easiest way to check, snap your left fingers. That shows you the direction you need to go. So you need to go this way. You got to pull. So I'm going to get a second wrench right there. Going to take an extra wrench And I'm going to connect it. We're going to go lefty-loosey. There we go. And now that we got it loose, okay, here we go. Loosen the oil drain bolt and drain the oil. Oil's going to shoot out a lot, so here we go. You kind of push the bolt towards the pan until you got it loose, then pull, and there you go. Draining the oil. And once it drains, I'll put the bolt back in, show you how to remove this oil filter. More to follow. While I'm waiting for the oil to drain, I usually let it drain 10 to 12 minutes. Takes a while to get all that out of there. I'm going to inspect the oil drain bolt, make sure that little rubber gasket's still there. If it's not, just put a little high temp sealant right at the base of that bolt, and that will help seal it even better. Because you don't need to go very tight on these, because it's a steel bolt and aluminum oil pan, so you don't go tight because it's easy to strip aluminum thread. So just go maybe about 20 inch-pounds or 5 foot-pounds. Very little torque, just enough to snug it. Okay, I've got the oil pan bolt back on. I just tightened it nice and snug. Now I'm going to remove the oil filter, and there's a special tool for that. Here it is right here. Oil filter socket, 3/8 inch drive. Take an extension, put it right in there. Extension and oil filter socket. And take it and put it on there real good. Attach a ratchet. Okay, put the ratchet on. There we go. Then remove the oil filter wrench once you got it broke loose. Well, that's okay. If it doesn't, just undo it with your hand. And there you go. Oh, there went the oil filter wrench. The oil filter. And when you put the new oil filter on, oh, look at that. One thing I saw, the biggest thing to check when you do your oil filter is make sure that rubber gasket is not sticking to it, which it did. See? Rubber gasket stuck to it, which means if you were to just put on the new oil filter, you'd have a leak. So that's something you always check. Make sure the bottom where that oil filter, the gasket from the oil filter, doesn't fall off the oil filter and get stuck to the housing right there. So I saved myself a leak right there by finding that. Okay, more to follow. I'm going to get the new oil filter, screw it on. Okay, I'm going to show you a close-up of what happened. Here's the old oil filter. Look right in that groove where the gasket's gone. The gasket had stuck to the oil filter housing on the engine. So you got to make sure the old gasket comes out with the old filter. Because that old gasket getting stuck on the housing, and you put the new oil filter with its new gasket, two gaskets are not going to work. They're going to counteract each other, and you're going to get oil leaking between those two gaskets, and you'll have a big old oil leak when you've done your oil change. So save yourself some grief. Make sure that rubber seal comes off with the old oil filter and is not stuck to the oil filter housing. So now what's next, I'm going to screw on a new oil filter. More to follow. Here's the new oil filter right here. And what you do is take a little bit of new oil and rub it on that new seal just before you screw it up into the oil filter housing. More to follow. Now we're going to take the new oil filter There's the housing there. We're going to take the new oil filter and put it on hand tight. You never go more than hand tight because it'll seal just fine. You got to do it hand tight. And just make sure you get the threads just right. So you get it just right. And then just tighten it clockwise with your hand. Just nice and tight with your hand. Here you go. Oil filter's installed. Next thing we do is lower the car and install the oil. More to follow. Okay, now it's time to pour the oil. So I'm going to pull the dipstick out most of the way so it doesn't register while I'm pouring the oil. Then I put it back in when it's ready. So, let's get the oil ready to pour. Take off the cap. Check the O-ring on it. Make sure it's good. Put the funnel in. And we'll start pouring our oil. Now let's pour the oil. And I'll stop right around 5-ish quarts or so. 5 quarts or so. Alright. Check the dipstick. Make sure the dipstick is in the crosshatches, which I'll probably fill it to the second crosshatch. And by the time it heats up and expands, it'll be right about there. So I'm going to pause this. More to follow. Alright, I just got done with a 30-minute drive. I had already filled the dipstick about halfway when I went on the drive. Actually, yeah, about halfway on the crosshatch when I went for the drive. There's the dipstick. Now I'm just letting the engine cool down, letting the oil go through the turbo. And then I'm going to check the dipstick to make sure it's on the crosshatches, but not on the highest end of the crosshatch. And I'm going to also show you how to reset your oil life on these Cadillac ATSs. I believe it's from 2013 to probably about 2020. Okay, I've got a nice Banks 1.8 eye gauge here too. That thing's very useful on the Cadillac. And here we are. I'm going to show you. You got these buttons right here. So you're going to hit the right button and get it right here. And now we're going to find the oil change or the oil life. So you keep scrolling through here. You push the down button and scroll, scroll, scroll. Keep scrolling down here. And eventually you're going to find the oil life. Battery voltage. There we go. There's the oil life right there. I already reset it to 100, but here's how you do it. All you got to do is hold down the select button, and it resets the oil life. And you hold this little button right here. You can do it with the key on, engine off, or with the engine at idle. You hold the select button on oil life until you see 100%. So right now you got a fresh oil change. Your oil life is set at 100%. Alright, so we'll get it back to where it was. Here's the tire pressure. I like that. I like it being on tire pressure. Okay. Now we're going to check the oil dipstick level now that the oil is nice and hot. More to follow. Now I've run the engine hot. Let's check the accurate oil level and make sure it's right in the crosshatches, just right, not too much, so we don't get oil leaks. Because that's one of the biggest problems with overfilling an oil system. If you overfill it, that's just as bad as underfilling it, because overfilling it, you get oil leaks coming out your rear main seal and other things. So let's go check the oil level now that the engine's been running. First, take it out, wipe the dipstick clean, and put it in again, and take it out. Now let's read the reading. Okay, we are perfectly... Okay, there's the cross hatches right there. You got the first hole and the second hole at the cross hatch, and we're right in the middle, just perfect. That's exactly where you want to be. You're not below the first hole, and you're not past the last hole with the engine oil hot. See, we got 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dots on the cross hatches. Oil is really hot, and we're just barely past the second dot on the cross hatches. So this is ideal engine oil servicing. So I hope you like this oil change on the 2018 Cadillac ATS with the 2-liter turbocharged intercooled engine. I hope you like this video. Please subscribe. I need all the subscribers I can get. Thank you for watching, and mad boosting.